If you like reading and listening to audiobooks, then there's a great way for you to practice your language skills. For more language-related content, subscribe to my channel and hit the bell icon to be notified when I post a new video. I recently saw a Reddit post where someone said they watched over 100 hours of a TV show with subtitles and felt like they made absolutely no progress. But they also said they like to read, but it doesn't help with their listening skills. So the perfect solution is to listen to audiobooks. First, I want to go into the reasons why you might want to use an audiobook. Then I'll share some tips on how to effectively use audiobooks to improve your language skills. First, audiobooks are great listening practice. They often go slower than conversations because when someone's reading, they read slower than when they're speaking. However, they're not going so slow that you feel like you're listening for something that's made for someone that's learning the language, so it still goes at a good pace. When you're listening to an audiobook, there's also a transcript that goes along with it called the actual book. So I really recommend that you have the book and the audiobook if you really want to make the most out of using audiobooks to improve your language skills. And there are no distractions. I personally like listening to audiobooks more than watching TV. With me, when I'm watching TV, I feel like I'm reading the subtitles sometimes, depending on the language, but I'm also trying to pay attention to what's actually happening on the screen. But when I'm listening to audiobooks, I feel like I can completely immerse myself in what I'm listening to, even if I'm reading along, because there's no visuals to really distract me. Are there any books that you've been dreaming of reading in your target language? Okay, listening to audiobooks is great, but you should make sure that you're listening to them in an effective way so that you're really learning. Now, for me personally, I don't think listening to audiobooks in a language you're not fully familiar with yet is something you can do while driving or washing the dishes, cleaning your house, or doing anything else that really requires your attention. So I think there are some specific things you should do when using audiobooks to learn a language. Like I mentioned before, you should listen to audiobooks you have an actual copy of the book of, or an ebook version. I find this really helpful. For example, I was listening to Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone in Spanish while also having the ebook for it.
Habían pasado aproximadamente 10 años desde el día en que los Dursley se despertaron y encontraron a su sobrino en la puerta de entrada.
That way, while I'm listening along to the audio, I'm making sure that I can fully understand what I'm hearing by also reading it, especially since there are very few differences between the ebook version and the audiobook version that I have. And I think this is really important because sometimes you know a lot of vocabulary, but you just don't quite understand it when it's spoken in a sentence. So for me, it's not that I didn't know vocabulary when I was listening to the audiobook. It was more so I just didn't quite catch what they were saying. So having the ebook or physical copy of the book is really helpful. Of course, that's not something that you want to continue doing while you're listening to the entire audiobook, but I highly recommend it in the beginning stages. Listen to a small amount at a time. You don't want to just passively listen to a large portion of your audiobook because then you're not really using it to learn a language and you're not really picking up any new vocabulary or enforcing the vocabulary into your memory that you already knew. So I recommend listening to a little bit at a time and intensely listening, making sure that you actually understand what you're listening to. Not 100% of the time, but at least most of what you listen to should be understood. Don't look up every single word that you hear or read that you don't understand, because that could take a lot of time. Like I mentioned before, you want to be able to understand most of what you hear, so it's okay if you don't understand a few words here or there. You might just need to gloss over them or pick up the meaning from context. But if it's a word that's really bothering you and it's really stopping you from understanding what you're listening to, then look it up. But if it's just a few words here or there, you don't know what they mean, but you understand the gist of what's being said, then I say keep going. Now, with all the words that you did decide to write down, I recommend making flashcards or doing whatever method you choose to do when you're studying new vocabulary. That way, as you continue on with the book, when those words pop up again, you will have a 100% understanding of what's being said. And this is optional, but you may need to listen to the same thing multiple times. But if you already understood most of what you heard the first time, then this isn't necessary. This is really only important to do if you decided to listen to something that's a bit higher than what you should have been listening to. So if you are listening to something that's really difficult for you, you might need to listen multiple times and write down a lot more vocabulary. But I think it's easier if you just stick to something that's only slightly above your level. And something I really like to do is record myself giving a summary of what I just listened to.
En este capítulo aprendimos que Harry Potter tiene tíos que quieren tener una vida normal y a ellos no les gustan los magos.
And this is helpful for multiple reasons. One, if you're able to record yourself summarizing in your target language what you just listened to, you're practicing vocabulary and you're improving your speaking skills by giving a summary of what you just heard. And you're also able to see if you really understood what you listened to by being able to summarize it. If you can't really summarize what you listened to, even in your native language, then maybe that means you didn't quite understand as much as you thought. So I recommend recording yourself giving a summary of what you just read in your target language, just to really enforce what you've learned, what you've listened to, and even as a little bit of speaking practice. If you liked this video and found it helpful, then please hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching.